The wind howled through the broken walls of Winterfell, and Jon Snow pulled his cloak tighter around him. "I don't like this," he muttered, staring out beyond the gate. The snow was falling fast now, thick as ash, and the dead weren't. "Far behind! They'll come before dawn," Tormund said, wiping frost from his beard. "I can smell it in the air." "I thought that was just you," Davos said, walking up beside them. Tormund grinned. "Might be." Jon didn't smile. "He's not like the others. The Night King, he watches, he waits, and he knows this place. He's marched this far south before," said Davos. "What makes you think he's different now?" Jon didn't answer. He looked at the old godswood tree behind them, its red leaves shaking in the storm. "Because this is his home." Tormund frowned. "You mean, what, he's a Stark?" Jon nodded slowly. "Bran saw it. Long ago, before the long night, there was a man, a Stark, taken by the children of the forest, turned into something else, and that man became the Night King." Silence fell over them, broken only by the wind. "Well," said Davos after a moment, "that's bloody depressing. Down in the crypts," Arya paced. "We're sitting down here like rats in a hole. Why?" "Because it's safer than up there," said Sansa. "You know that." Arya stopped. "If he's a Stark, if he remembers this place, then he'll come for it," Sansa finished. She looked at the old stone statues, the cold faces of long-dead kings. "He might not just want to destroy us. He might want to take Winterfell for himself." Arya looked at the statue of Ned. "Then he'll find us waiting." On the wall, Grey Worm scanned the darkness. Ghost stood beside him, fur stiff with cold. From the shadows, Bran's voice came, soft and clear. "He's close." Jon turned. "You see him?" Bran's eyes were pale now, all pupil. "He remembers this place, not just as a target, as a home." "What do you mean?" Jon asked. Bran blinked and his voice changed, deeper. "He was Brandon, Stark once, son of Torrin, taken north in the last war with the First Men. They turned him at the Heart Tree, gave him blue eyes and a frozen heart." "You're saying he knows Winterfell?" Bran nodded. "He built part of it. He fought here. He was raised in these halls." Tormund laughed, but there was no joy in it. "So we're fighting a Stark in Stark land. Great." Jon turned away, jaw tight. "Then we don't wait for him to come to us." They met at the war. A tent that night. Snow blew in from every corner. "We strike before dawn," Jon said, "before he surrounds the walls." Daenerys stood across from him, arms folded. "With what? Half our army's gone. Dragons are tired. We can't even see 20 feet through the storm." Jon looked at her. "I'm not asking, I'm telling. He knows this place better than we do. He'll use that. We have to surprise him." "Surprise death," Daenerys said. "We tried that at Hardhome. That wasn't Winterfell." Tyrion stepped forward. "If he remembers this place, maybe there's a way to use that." Everyone looked at him. "Maybe there's something here that matters to him," Tyrion said. "A memory, a place, a person." Jon's eyes moved to Bran. "Is there?" Bran nodded. "The crypts. He was buried once, long ago, before he rose." Jon frowned. "You're saying his body's still down there?" "No," Bran said, "but the memory of it is. He might go there, looking for what he lost." "Or to destroy what he left behind," said Sansa, stepping in. As dawn cracked the sky with blue light, the horns blew. Jon stood by the gates with Ghost and Tormund, sword in hand. The storm had quieted, but the silence was worse. Then they came, like shadows on snow, thousands, endless, and at the front, him, the Night King, tall, pale, crown of ice on his brow, sword of frost in his hand. He didn't ride. He walked. Jon stepped forward. The Night King stopped just beyond the gate, and for a moment, just one, his eyes flicked to the godswood. "He knows," Jon whispered. Then the screaming began. The dead surged forward like water breaking a dam. Steel clashed. Dragons roared from above. Fire met ice in a storm of fury. Jon fought, blade dancing. He saw Brienne cut down 3 whites, Podrick holding the line beside her. Grey Worm screamed orders. Gendry swung his hammer. Arya vanished into the shadows, and above it all, the Night King walked untouched straight for the godswood. Bran sat alone beneath the heart tree, eyes closed. The Night King stepped into the clearing. The weirwood leaves whispered, red against white, blood against bone. He stopped. Bran opened his eyes. Brandon. The Night King paused. For just a moment, something flickered, a face, a boy, a name. Then the frost returned. He raised his sword, but before he could strike, Arya came from the shadows, silent, swift. But he caught her. His hand closed around her throat. "Now!" Bran yelled. Jon charged into the clearing, Longclaw in hand. The Night King turned. Steel met ice, and the world held its breath. Jon's sword rang against the Night King's blade with a sound like cracking glaciers. The frost spread from where they touched, racing up the steel like creeping vines. Jon gritted his teeth, swung again, faster, harder. But the Night King didn't move like a corpse. He moved like a warrior. They clashed under the bleeding red leaves of the heart tree. Arya gasped, still pinned by his icy grip, feet barely touching the ground. Her dagger slipped from her hand and hit the snow with a soft thud. "Let her go!" Jon shouted, slashing. The Night King caught his blade with his bare hand. No scratch, no blood, only cold. Then, like it was nothing, he threw Jon across the godswood. Jon slammed into a tree and dropped to the ground, breath gone. Bran's voice rang out, firm and sharp. "He's still in there, a piece of him, Brandon Stark." The Night King turned his head slightly, that name cutting through the silence like a sword. His hand trembled for a breath, just a breath, and Arya's foot kicked out. She caught him in the knee and dropped free. She scrambled for the dagger, dragonglass, her only shot, but the Night King spun and kicked her aside. "No!" Bran shouted. He stood up. Not the crippled boy now, not the three-eyed raven, but a Stark. "I remember you," he said. "You were the boy who wouldn't kneel, who wouldn't run. You built the crypts, you fought the first men, you—" The Night King surged forward, and Jon was there again, sword raised. This time he screamed as he swung, putting all his strength behind it. Steel met frost and held. The Night King shoved him back, but Jon didn't fall. He grinned. "Come on then." Arya picked up the dagger. She ran. Behind the Night King, she leapt, but he turned, caught her again. Only this time, her other hand already held the dagger, and she plunged it into his side, right where his heart once beat, right where it still remembered being human. He froze, eyes wide. For just a moment, the godswood was silent. Then the Night King exploded into shards of ice and wind. The dead across the battlefield collapsed. Later, Jon sat by the broken wall, his face pale, eyes lost in the storm. Bran rolled up beside him. "You were right. He was a Stark," Jon said. "He knew Winterfell. He knew everything." Tormund came limping over. "Well, I'm just glad the creepy bastard's dead." Arya joined them, her cheek bruised but her eyes steady. "He wasn't just dead. He was angry, like he'd been left behind." Bran nodded. "He was made to forget who he was, but he didn't. Not fully." Jon looked out at the melting snow. "Then this wasn't a war, not really." "What was it?" Arya asked. "A homecoming," Jon said, "and we ended it in the crypts. Down below, the dead were being burned. Grey Worm lit the pyres one by one. Brienne placed her hand on Podrick's shoulder, silent. Sam stood beside Gilly, holding her close. Tyrion poured himself a drink. "We survived the dead. I suppose now we go back to killing each other again?" Daenerys didn't laugh. Sansa stared at the flame. "He was one of us. He wore our face, our name." "He lost that name long ago," said Davos. "Still, makes you wonder what we'd be like if we were turned." Jon said nothing. Bran spoke. "At last, we carry their blood, but we don't carry their curse." Arya looked up. "No, no," Bran said, but we carry the memory. That night the godswood was quiet again. Bran sat beneath the heart tree, eyes closed. You can rest now, he whispered. Far in the snow, a gust of wind moved through the leaves, and somewhere deep in the crypts below Winterfell, the old stones wept with the sound of melting ice. The fires burned all night. By morning, the sky above Winterfell was thick with smoke. Ash drifted down like snow, soft and cold. The battle was over, but the war was not forgotten. Jon stood at the battlements, watching the black clouds stretch across the north. Davos joined him, a grim look on his face. I thought killing him would feel like a victory, Jon said. Davos glanced sideways. It's hard to celebrate when half your friends are gone. Jon's jaw tightened, and he was one of us. You're still stuck on that? He was Stark blood. So's the Mad King's grandson. Doesn't mean anything unless we let it. Jon didn't answer. He stared at the horizon, his knuckles white against the stone wall. I keep thinking, what if it had been me? Davos sighed. It wasn't, that's what matters. Behind them, the halls of Winterfell buzzed with whispers. In the great hall, Sansa paced. We need to know more, she said, voice low. If he was truly Brandon Stark, then the story's wrong. The legends, the songs, none of them tell them truth. Bran sat at the high table, hands folded. They never do. Tyrion poured himself another goblet of wine. Truth rarely makes good music, but you're right, people will ask. Arya leaned back in her chair, feet on the table. Then lie. Sansa blinked. Excuse me? Lie, Arya said again. Say he was a monster, a curse. Don't give the North more ghosts to worry about. We can't erase our bloodline, Bran said calmly. The North remembers. And so do I. So what then? Sansa asked. We tell everyone we fought a Stark. Bran nodded. We tell the truth. Or we wait for someone else to tell it. And their way. Tyrion swirled his wine. People prefer monsters with no faces. Makes it easier to sleep at night. Arya smirked. Then they'll never sleep again. Outside, Gendry was sharpening blades when Arya found him. You're alive, he said. She grinned. So are you. He put the sword down. You stabbed a Stark. I did. He raised a brow. Does that make you the Lady of Winterfell now? She shoved him. I'm not a lady. He laughed, then looked serious. You saved us. Arya looked out across the courtyard. I saved what's left. They stood in silence for a moment before Gendry asked, Do you think he felt anything? In the end. She thought about the moment. His eyes, the grip on her throat. The way he hesitated. Maybe, she said, but if he did, it wasn't enough. In the library, Sam flipped through ancient scrolls by candlelight. He's not in any of these, he muttered. Nothing about a Brandon Stark turned by the children. Nothing with blue eyes or ice crowns. Bran sat across from him. Because history feared him. Sam looked up. You mean they erased him? They buried him, Bran said. Just like they buried his body. They thought if they didn't speak his name, he'd be forgotten. Sam frowned. That's dangerous, Bran nodded. Which is why we must remember. But why come back? Now? Sam asked. After all this time? Bran's voice lowered. Because something woke him, and it wasn't just me. Sam sat back, the weight of the truth pressing down. There's more, isn't there? Bran didn't blink. Much more. That evening, Jon walked into the godswood alone. The red leaves rustled in the wind, blood against bone-white bark. Bran was waiting there, as if he knew Jon would come. You said he built part of Winterfell, Jon said. Bran nodded. The original, crypts. He helped carve the tunnels. He laid the first stones. Jon looked down at the ground beneath their feet. So he walked here, bled here, maybe even swore the old gods here. He did. Jon exhaled slowly. And we burned him. Bran shook his head. We released him. Jon glanced over. What do you mean? He wasn't just angry, Bran said. He was trapped. lost inside what they made him. Killing him didn't destroy a man, it freed one. Jon looked away, eyes heavy. So why do I still feel like we lost something? Bran's voice was quiet. Because we did. In the crypts, Sansa stood before Ned's statue, fingers brushing the cold stone. He protected us, she whispered. He died for us. Footsteps echoed behind her. Arya appeared beside her, arms crossed. Do you ever wonder what Father would have said about all this? Sansa asked. Arya nodded. He'd probably tell us to burn the godswood and never speak of it again. Sansa almost smiled. He'd say the dead should stay buried, Arya added, even if they have Stark blood. Sansa's gaze turned toward the dark tunnels behind the statue. Not all of them stayed dead. That night the ravens circled Winterfell. Bran watched them from his tower, eyes pale as the moon. Jon stood beside him, arms folded. What now? Jon asked. Bran didn't look at him. There's more ice beyond the wall, and not all of it sleeps. You think another is coming? Bran nodded. I saw something, a shadow, colder than him. Jon stared out at the night sky. Then we prepare. No, Bran said softly. We remember. And far beyond the wall, deep in the frozen dark, something stirred, something old. Far to the north, beyond the ruined wall and the blood-soaked snow, the wind carried a strange sound. Not just howling, not just the whisper of cold. It was singing, not from a throat, but from the ice itself. A low hum that echoed through ancient caves and frozen rivers. The last remnants of something older than the Night King, something deeper, something that had never been given a name. Back at Winterfell, the fires were out, the halls quieter. But rest never stayed long in the north. I saw it, Bran said again, voice distant. A shadow in the frost. It was watching the battle, watching him fall. Jon leaned against the stone window, eyes narrowed. Another one of them? Bran shook his head. Not like him, older. Jon turned to him. What could be older than the Night King? Bran looked up. The thing that created him. Jon's mouth opened slightly. The children. No, Bran said. The one that made the children create him. Jon stepped back. You're not making sense. They were scared, Bran said. Not of us, of it. They turned Brandon Stark into a weapon. He was never meant to lead, only to stop something else. Jon's voice dropped to a whisper. And now that he's gone, Bran nodded. It's coming. In the war room, the map was littered with markers. Grey Worm pointed to the coast. Whispers of dead things washing ashore, he said. Fishermen won't sail out. Whole villages. Gone quiet, Sansa frowned. But we destroyed the Night King. We destroyed a king, Tyrion corrected, sipping wine. Not the kingdom. Arya leaned over the map. If there's something out there, we should strike first. With what? Davos asked. Half our army's in the dirt. The rest are too cold to lift a sword. Daenerys stepped forward. We have dragons. Jon looked up sharply. They're tired. She met his eyes. So am I. Sansa exhaled. Then we need allies. Ones who haven't fought yet. Tyrion raised a brow. You want to send ravens? No, Sansa said. I want to send a Stark. Arya grinned. About time. The next morning, Arya rode out with 6 men, headed east toward the Vale. Sansa watched her from the gates. She'll come back, Jon said. She always does, Sansa replied. Then she added, What about you? Jon shook his head. I don't belong here. Don't start that again. I'm not a Stark. You bled for this house. You led us. You are one. He looked away. That name is starting to feel like a curse. Sansa studied him. Maybe it is, but it's ours. Down in the crypts again, Sam moved through the torchlit tunnels with a bundle of old scrolls. He stopped at a door, one sealed tight with ancient iron. A door even the caretakers hadn't opened in generations. Bran waited beside it. You sure about this? Sam asked. Bran nodded. This is where they hid. what they didn't want to remember. With effort, Sam pulled the door open. Inside was a small chamber, empty except for a stone altar and a single flat slab with runes etched into it. "What is it?" Sam whispered. Bran walked to it, running his hand along the stone. "It's not a tomb." "Then what?" Bran turned. "It's a prison." Back at the surface, Daenerys stood near the dragons. Drogon breathed slow, smoke curling from his nostrils. She placed a hand on his side. "You've felt it too, haven't you?" He growled low. She stared out past the walls. "They thought I was the last fire, but there's still ice left in this world." Grey Worm approached. "Your Grace, scouts have returned. And they say the snow is falling in dawn." Daenerys blinked. "That's impossible." "Not anymore." She turned to Drogon. "Then we fly." Jon stood at the godswood, eyes locked on the red tree. Tormund walked up behind him, carrying a sack of supplies. "You're not going to like what I heard." "Tell me." "There's a place far north, past the shattered wall. Ice lakes, black caves. The free folk say the old gods whisper there." Jon raised a brow. "And they say something woke up." Jon clenched his jaw. "Then we ride north." Tormund grinned. "I knew you'd say that." That night, Bran sat alone in his chamber, watching through the eyes of a raven soaring over the north. The trees below were twisted, the rivers frozen. Then it came into view, a shape in the ice, not walking, not moving, but breathing. One eye opened, not blue but white, and Bran whispered, "The Night King was a beginning, not the end." The snow north of the wall had changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It fell in sharp flakes, cutting like glass, swirling in unnatural patterns. Even the free folk said it wasn't right. Jon led the way, Ghost beside him, his red eyes scanning. The white, Tormund, wrapped in furs, trudged behind, muttering curses. "This was a bad idea," Tormund grumbled. "Only a fool rides north after killing the Night King." "I've always been a fool," Jon said. Tormund chuckled. "That's true, but you're our fool." Jon stopped at a cliff's edge. Below, the land stretched in jagged ice valleys, broken rivers, black trees snapping in the wind. "There," he pointed, "the cave." Inside the frozen cavern, it was silent, no dripping, no echoes, just air so still it felt like the cave was holding its breath. Jon lit a torch. The flame flickered blue. They moved deeper, past markings older than words, symbols of suns, wolves, and something else. An eye ringed in white. Ghost growled low. "What is that?" Tormund asked, pointing. To a wall, carved deep into the stone as if by claws, was a symbol they all recognized, a spiral. Jon's breath caught. "He was here!" "No!" came a voice from behind. They spun around. Bran stood at the entrance, calm, eyes far away. "He wasn't here," Bran said. "He came from here." Back in Winterfell, Daenerys circled the war map. "We can't just—" "Wait," Sansa shook her head. "Jon's out there. Let him find whatever it is first. What if he doesn't come back?" "Then we hold the north. We keep the people safe." Daenerys stared at the flames in the hearth. "Safe? There's no such thing anymore." Tyrion looked up. "If the stories are true, what's coming doesn't care about thrones or borders." "It's older than all of us." Sansa turned sharply. "Then maybe it's time we stop pretending one person can save everyone." Grey Worm stepped in. "A raven just arrived. Jon found something." In the cavern, Bran placed his hand against the spiral. "The children didn't create this symbol," he said. "They copied it." Jon frowned. "Copied it from what?" "Something they found. Something buried." Tormund stepped back. "This is starting to feel cursed." Bran spoke softly. "This cave wasn't a prison. It was a tomb." Jon stared. "Into the dark." "What's buried here?" Bran looked at him. "The first ice." Jon's grip on his sword tightened. "What does that mean?" "It's not a king. It's a god." Back at Winterfell, Arya returned, covered in dust and snow. She dropped a bloodied bag onto the war table. Tyrion opened it. Inside, a chunk of solid ice, black at the core, wrapped in iron. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "Near the Eyrie, frozen into a man's chest. He never melted, not even near fire." Daenerys touched it. "Cold. But it's humming." Sansa narrowed her eyes. "We've seen that before. Around him." Tyrion nodded. "The Night King had a piece in his chest. That's why fire couldn't kill him." Arya crossed her arms. "There's more of them." In the cave, Bran's voice grew hollow. There were 5 fragments, 5 pieces of the first ice. When Brandon Stark was turned, they buried one in him. "And the rest?" Jon asked. "Scattered," Bran replied. "Hidden in men, in places. Some forgot what they were, others remembered." Jon's heart sank. "So if one created the Night King," Bran finished it for him, "the others can create worse." Tormund spat on the ground. "We should have stayed south." Bran turned to Jon. "You came here for answers. The truth is, we didn't end it. We just woke something older." Jon looked toward the deepest part of the cave. "Then we end it now." Back at Winterfell, Daenerys prepared the dragons. Drogon snarled, snapping at the air. "He knows," she whispered, stroking his neck. "Knows what?" Tyrion asked. "That something is coming, something even he fears." Sansa climbed the steps beside them. "Then we fight together." Daenerys didn't turn. "Together? After everything?" "We're not friends," Sansa said. "But we're alive. And we won't be if we let the past keep us apart." Daenerys paused, then nodded. "Then ready the north." In the cave, Jon stepped into a hollow chamber. The torchlight glinted off ice-covered walls. In the center, half buried, was a shape. Not a body, not quite, a figure made of ice and stone. No face, no mouth, just a blank mask of white. Jon approached it, and the walls screamed, not with voices, but with wind, frost, fury. Bran yelled, "Jon, get back!" But Jon reached out. The ice cracked beneath his touch. A blast of cold threw them all backward, and the thing opened its eyes. Not blue, not white, but grey, human, and it spoke. The cave shook as the figure stepped forward. Ice fell from its body like old bark shedding. Its eyes, grey as a winter sky, locked onto Jon. Tormund stumbled back, sword half drawn. That ain't a white." Bran's voice trembled slightly. "It's not dead, it's not alive, it's before both." Jon stood his ground. "What are you?" The thing blinked slowly. Its mouth didn't move, but the voice came anyway. Inside their heads. "I am what came before names. I am the frost of the first breath." Jon gritted his teeth. "You were buried for a reason. I slept because the world was warm. You broke it, you brought the fire." Bran stepped forward, calm but pale. "You are the first ice, and you are the last sons of summer." "You've forgotten who you were." Jon raised his blade. "I haven't forgotten anything. I remember the dead children. The burnt villages. I remember your creation. You remember shadows. I remember fire-eating sky. I remember the betrayal." Tormund whispered, "He's mad." Bran shook his head. "No, he's vengeful." Back at Winterfell, the storm came. Fast. Snow slammed the towers, sharper than any blizzard before. People screamed as frost climbed the walls like fingers. Arya ran to the ramparts. "They're coming!" Sansa stood at the gates, watching the sky. Tyrion shouted from the tower, "That's not snow, it's ash!" Daenerys mounted Drogon. "Get the people inside, seal the crypts." Grey Worm gave orders, but already the guards were freezing where they stood. In the distance, a figure moved across the snow, barefoot. No army, just walking. Sansa gasped. "What is that?" No one answered. In the cave, Bran's nose began to bleed. "He's not alone," he said, holding his head. The first ice turned to Jon. "Your people thought they could kill winter. You only delayed it." Jon didn't blink. "Then we fight." "You, already lost." The cave split. Cracks burst from the walls, ice-formed fangs along the ceiling. The thing raised one hand, and from the floor a new figure emerged. Female eyes dark as night, a crown of thorns. Tormund swore. "What now?" Bran's voice broke. "She's the second shard." Jon slashed, but his sword shattered. The woman smiled. Winterfell groaned under the weight of snow and screams. Arya fought at the gate, blades flashing. "They don't die, not like whites." Drogon blasted fire across the field. Dozens of these new creatures froze mid-charge, only to shatter. Then reform in seconds. Sansa turned to Daenerys. "Fall back, we can't hold them." Daenerys wiped blood from her cheek. "Then we die with fire." Suddenly a blinding howl came from the crypts, a wailing cry that shook the walls. Tyrion shouted, "Something's waking down there!" In the cave, Bran collapsed. "Jon," he gasped. "There's a third." Jon grabbed him. "Where?" Bran opened his eyes, completely white now. "Winterfell." Jon's heart dropped. "The last shard, they put it in our home." The first. Ice and the thorn-crowned woman moved in. Tormund roared and charged. Too late. The frost hit his chest and he flew back, body limp. Jon grabbed Bran and ran, fire torch in hand, ice snapping behind them. As they reached the surface, the sky above them cracked like glass. Winterfell was burning, but not with fire. The walls steamed, groaned, and bled ice. Sansa pulled children into the keep, shouting orders. Arya leapt over frozen corpses, dragging Gendry to safety. Drogon fought in the air, locked with another creature, something made of wind and jagged frost. "Bit into his neck," he screamed. Daenerys fell from the saddle, hit the ground hard. Then the gate exploded. Jon burst through on horseback. Bran clutched in front. "They're here," he shouted. Sansa turned, eyes wide. "The godswood!" They ran, at the heart. "Tree!" Bran stood before the old face. Jon and Arya flanked him. Daenerys limped over, bloodied. "This ends now." Bran raised both hands. From the roots of the tree, ice began to form. A figure emerged. The third shard. It looked like a child. No eyes, no mouth, but its scream was all of winter's rage. Bran stepped forward. "I am of you," he said, "but I choose warmth." The thing lunged. Arya threw her blade. Jon caught it mid-air, turned and plunged it into the shard's chest. The scream stopped. Across the field the frost shattered. The creatures screamed and crumbled. The clouds split, and Winterfell, bloodied, broken, stood quiet. Jon dropped to his knees. Drogon landed beside Daenerys, shielding her with his wings. Bran sat at the base of the tree, breathing hard. Sansa knelt beside him. "Is it done?" Bran whispered. "The shards are gone." Arya stood beside Jon, both covered in cuts and frost. "So what now?" she asked. Jon looked at the heart tree, then at the north. "We bury the dead, and we never forget." Later, as the snows melted, Jon stood at the edge of the wall's ruins. Tormund, wrapped in new furs, limped up. "You still going north?" Jon nodded. "The world needs watchers, even if there's no wall left." Tormund smirked. "Then I'll walk." "With you," Ghost barked softly. Jon turned back once, looked at the land he fought for.